Hello and welcome to Americans Learn. My name is Lauren, and today I am going to be reacting to a content creator called Lawrence and his channel Lost in the Pond. So today I'm going to be looking at a video that he did called 5 Ways British and American Meal Etiquette is Very Different. So I'm curious. I had never even considered that people in America and Britain might eat differently. It just did not occur to me. So I'm curious to see what this guy has to say about how those things are different. If you want to see more content like this, please let me know in the comments below. Give this video a big thumbs up, and that way we'll know that this is the kind of thing we want to look at. I'm curious to see the differences in American and British meal etiquette, because apparently it's different. So let's go.
If they hear your accent and you are American, their ears might prick up a bit thinking, here comes a payday.
All right, well, that sounds like he's going to talk about if you're an American traveling in Europe, and, you know, they might think that you're going to tip them extra because you tip in America and tipping doesn't really happen in Britain. So that might be one of the things, I'm guessing.
Hello, I'm Lawrence, and I'm on a quest to uncover all of the memos that Britain and America lost in the pond, and one of those memos pertains to how we eat, dining etiquette. It's so important, especially when you're meeting your American family for the first time. I'm not talking from experience, maybe just a bit. Cultural differences around the dinner table don't just come down to the words we use, like chips versus fries, or the dishes that we serve. So, you know, America's pecan pie versus Britain's spotted dick, and that is an actual dessert, okay? Look it up.
I hadn't even considered the food thing either. Now that he started mentioning that we like call food things differently, I wasn't thinking about that as but that is true. We have very different names for certain things.
It's not on your work computer, but it's also about some of the mechanisms that we use to get it into our mouths. I'm still talking about food. And also some of the customs and politeness norms that comes with the process of eating. And so without further crab rangoon, here are 5 ways that British and American eating etiquette is very, very different.
Okay,
whether you call it cutlery like we do in Britain, or silverware or flatware, or in this case plasticware, because, you know, we are rationing.
We call it utensils a lot of the time at the restaurant I work at, just because it's like if they're to go, it's utensils. And it's not, because it's not silver.
We can all agree that without them, meal times would be very, very messy, especially in America where they put sauce on everything. But the real question is, how do we hold them? And this was part of my existential crisis after I moved to the United States, because I grew up learning the European style, or as it might be known here, the continental style. And when I say that, I'm referring to what is the official utensil etiquette, right? As opposed to the official American etiquette. And I'm going to show you, I think anyway, some of the differences.
Okay, of course America's gonna do that different. I didn't, you hold your, okay. I was like, I feel like you hold it the way that's comfortable and not gonna throw things. You don't like hold it like this, right? And like.
I personally don't have either etiquette completely down because, in my wife's words, I still eat like a toddler. But it mostly comes down to how we hold the fork. In Britain, you hold it kind of like that, I think. So you've got it, the end of it's touching your palm, and then you sort of grasp it with your thumb and your pointy finger, and it's there for pointing downward, right? And you stick it into the potatoes or the strawberries or the spotted dick. And notice it's in my left hand. That's going to be important in a moment. And in the other hand, you have your knife, right? Usually like this, with the pointy finger right there, and it's touching your palm again. So consistent on both hands, right? It's almost an extension of you. You're almost Wolverine, but from the United Kingdom or Europe. And then you do this, right? Usually at a lower level. You wouldn't be able to see it because my arms are off screen now, so I'll put them back there. And then you cut into the potatoes or the strawberries or the creamy spotted dick. I mean, you can come with custard. That's normal. And voila, and put it in your mouth. There's nothing on this. This isn't that scene in Hook where they eat invisible food. It goes this way round, right, with the tines facing downward toward your tongue. In America, it's quite a bit different, right? So people will hold their fork like this, with the tines facing upward. In other words, to kind of scoop up the food, right? So they'll do that. And actually sometimes, not every time, I mean, I'm sure there are people that circumvent all of the things you hear in this very list, but sometimes Americans won't even use a knife, right? You'll just see them scoop something up, maybe a potato. We won't go through the entire list again. Put it in their mouth. If they want to cut up things in that way, sometimes sometimes I'll do it with the fork, right? Don't recommend it with plastic forks. You know, you can get through these pretty quickly if you do that. But if they do use a knife, they may turn the fork like this into the potato and then cut like that. You've got it there, you turn it back around, it's in your gob, and there you go. Bob's your uncle, you've got potatoes. And you know, that's what a lot of Americans do.
It's efficient, right? Like it's more efficient way to eat, I think.
My father-in-law, though, did this. He had it like that
Ugh,
and like
messed
that.
up.
He'd turn it that way, and then like that. It sort of looked, I should tell you that my in-laws were cavemen, but it was
Sounds
through
like
those
it.
very cavemen / dear relatives of my wife that I was first introduced to our next entry.
All right, wow. Because like I wouldn't have even like considered how a British person would hold a fork. It's good to know for me, like if ever I want to like pursue acting for real, like I do, but like now I know how to hold the fork like a British person. Good to know.
Yes, saying grace. This one is quite a tough entry in many ways because, you know, in order to talk about it, I do have to somewhat generalize. And also, I don't have much data to back up what I'm about to say. It's more observationally driven, right? So when I lived in England for 27 years of my life, I don't say that with disdain. It was a good time. But in all that time, I don't really remember sitting down to a dinner function of any kind and really sort of saying grace beforehand. In other words, kicking off the meal with a sort of faith-based thanks. Now, part of that, and again, this is where the generalization comes in, so bear with me, but in England, we tend to be less sort of like publicly open or just sort of even privately open, if you can be, among your family members about your religious beliefs. Whereas in the United States, I think people are more sort of proud of that, whatever their religious faith is. And so sometimes in some families, and this again could be regional, so I might well be generalizing, but some families, including the extended relatives that I married into, I didn't marry them, I married into the family.
Got
Some
you.
families, and I gather maybe quite a lot of families here in the United States, particularly at special events like Thanksgiving or maybe even a homecoming of some kind, will sort of say grace before the meal. And there'll usually be one family member who stands up and says it on behalf of the entire group. And then you say amen and go about your way. For me, it was quite weird at first, I think. Now, I'm very respectful of other people's religious beliefs. I didn't really know what to do except just sort of sit there and then wait for it to be done. And then, because I had half a mind on the turkey. So what are you going to do? And because I'm generalizing here, it's important for me to say that this is my experience. I'd be very interested to hear other people's experiences, other Europeans' experiences of coming here and maybe having to say grace when they're not used to it, or, you know, Americans that don't themselves practice this. I've also heard it can go one step further here where the whole family holds hands. You know, I definitely draw the line at that, especially right now. The best way that I can put this for British people watching back home is, you know, in football when, you know, somebody dies and they have a minute's silence within the stadium, and then when the minute's silence is up, they all erupt in applause and all of that. It's kind of like that, minus the applause. You know, it's just an amen. But the energy after that is great because you all want to tuck into your food. And because the energy's so good, that leads us on to our next entry.
But I will say, yeah. So like I grew up in a house where we said grace before eating. So it's like, you know, but in my house we just, you know, our thank you God for the food. That was we had it down to a like we had it wrote, like the thing that we used for grace was like, dear Lord, thank you for this food. Thank you that mom could prepare it, and please help the rest of us to have a good day. Amen. Like it was like, or something like that. It was like, thank you for the food. Thank you that mom could prepare it. And there was a third thing that was in there. Please, like, you know, help us to have a good night, like something of that nature. Amen. And that was our prayer that we always said. My mom's family's house, though, whenever we went there for like Christmas or Thanksgiving, we did have to hold hands. And my grandfather would usually pray. Sometimes one of my cousins who was kind of sucking up all the time, she would ask to pray. And so like both of them would have these like kind of like long prayers, like, oh, thank you. It's for the like we're just waiting for the food. I mean, at my grandparents' house, the food wasn't fantastic a lot of the time, but it was just like, we want to eat something. I'm hungry. I want to get in my bread and fruit salad. But like, and again, if they made one of me or my brother, my sister pray, we would, dear Lord, thank you for this food. Thank you that whoever could prepare it, prepared it. Please let it nourish us and help us have a good day. Amen. Like, we still were like, no, we're not. We want to eat, We're not doing this prayer thing as much as possible. I'm like, I think my mom was a little bit like sad about it. I think she wanted us to pray a little bit better, but it was like, Mom, if you want to do the prayer, you can do the prayer. Instead, you're going to make us do it. So we'll do it the way we want. But yeah, so I did grow up in a house where we had to say grace. And like on my dad's side of the family, he grew up Catholic. So they had like a specific prayer that they said, like an actual prayer. I don't really remember that. Bless us, O Lord, for these thy gifts which you're about to receive. Something bounty, something. I don't know. I never like. We didn't. But there was like an actual prayer that they did. But yeah, I don't know. And I kind of knew that America's weird when it comes to religion, and more people do things like say grace. And I work in the restaurant industry for a long time, so I mean, I see people like sit there and they start to pray, and it's like, oh, okay, I guess I won't ask you if you want to drink. Like, or it's like, I want to, you have to wait when as a server, if they're praying, you have to like, all right, don't really have time to like wait for you to do this. So and then I get mad. It's a whole thing. Table chatter.
Oh, I don't mind a bit of chatter and exceptionally weird noises. And at an American dinner table, you're going to get a lot of chatter. Usually, again, this is another generalization, but on the whole, this is my experience. And I'm one of those people who doesn't think that Americans are always loud, as the stereotype dictates. But one exception tends to be in restaurants, right? I do hear the volume go up there as compared to Britain, where it feels like we're always battling with this war within ourselves to not air our dirty laundry in public.
Yeah.
I'm not saying we don't talk at dinner tables, don't get me wrong. It feels observationally, once again, and again, there's no data on this. There's not somebody going around measuring the decibels in every restaurant in either country, especially right now because they're all closed. But that's my general experience of it. Now, I could be getting thrown off course a little bit here because, my wife's family are really loud. Don't tell them I said that, although this is a public video. They know it's true. I've told them before, and that's why we've not spoken in a year. But here in America, you might be in a restaurant, sitting down with just one other person, trying to have a quiet, intimate conversation, and to your right there's this really loud family with a 5-year-old running around with a stupid hat on that he got from the restaurant, right? So they're further enhancing the volume of said family. And then on the other side there's clearly what is a date happening, and the woman is just sitting there quietly looking quite glum, while the man very audibly and haphazardly talks about all of the Fortune 500 companies he's worked for, and she stares into space, presumably thinking of all the ways that she can get out of there. Mm-hmm. But on the other hand, once you do get used to that sort of raised volume, it does add to the atmosphere, and if you're already in a good mood and you enter somewhere where thousands, that's a huge restaurant, hundreds maybe, where there's lots of people and they're in a good mood, and it just sort of bounces off the walls. But speaking of restaurants, that brings us on to our next entry.
I will say, like, part of it is like the volume in restaurants. It gets exponentially louder the more full it gets, of course, because there's more people talking. So it's like the restaurant I work at, currently, we are usually pretty busy on weekends, on like Friday and Saturday night, which is, typical for a restaurant. But, like, we'll fill up. So we'll be full, like both the bar area and the restaurant area will be full. And it is very loud in both rooms. So it's like, it's fine. Like, you do have to sort of shout as a server in order to like be heard sometimes, which is incredibly frustrating and not great on your vocal cords. But yes, it's like, but it is also incredibly funny as a server. Like, the things that I have heard people say out loud in public some of them are hilarious. Some of them are devastating. And it's like, why are we doing this here? And now it's like, and sometimes, they continue their conversation as I'm sitting there, like, giving them extra water, like dropping off food or something. It's like, this is maybe not where you want to have this conversation, possibly. Like, seriously, the things I've overheard, holy crap. I heard this one time, it was a mother and a daughter sitting at the table. The daughter just like on her phone, like, but like explaining to her mother how she's gonna put her in a home. And the mom was like sitting there in tears. Like, and the girl, she's just like, it's like, it was like awful. And it's just like, why are we doing this in the restaurant? Like, can we, this is terrible. Like, what are we doing? So anyway, but I've also heard some very funny, and I've experienced that exact scenario that he described with like the guy like just blabbing on and on and on about like all of his amazing things he's done, and the girl's like, oh, okay, uh-huh. I do remember one time that I was sitting in, I was actually at a customer at a restaurant, and like this conversation was happening, and like my friend and I were just like kind of mostly listening to their conversation, and just like we were cackling to each other about it because it was like, this is nonsense. And he fully oblivious. I think she noticed us hearing it. I think she noticed us. He did not notice us at all, like commenting on their conversation. But it's just like, dude, if you're gonna be that loud, you're gonna have to experience, you know, sometimes people are gonna have some commentary. He was talking about like how great he is at snowboarding or something. It was nonsense. Anyway.
Servers, servers, servers. My heart does go out to all of the servers and anybody else to whom this applies around the world who can't go into work right now. And a huge thank you to delivery servers who are able to keep people fed who might need it. But, you know, back in peacetime when the restaurants were still open, there was quite a marked difference between, you know, British servers and American servers and the way they sort of conduct themselves at the dinner table while you're eating your dinner. In Britain, they're quite standoffish, and I know that's just a trait of British people in general. I get that, but they don't have the incentive, which we'll talk about in a minute, to constantly be coming back to your table and seeing how you're doing, checking if you need a refill on that water, because you probably won't get one anyway. I'm joking, of course you'll get a free refill on your water, just nothing else. Often, know this, if you want their attention, you're going to have to get their attention yourself, and that includes when it comes time to pay the bill. Whereas in the United States, and each restaurant has its different policy on this, you know, the waiting staff will come to your table every 5 minutes usually just to see how you're doing, and it seemingly doesn't matter if you're in the middle of a seriously one-sided conversation about the Fortune 500 companies you've worked for. They will still come over and go, hey, what's up? How's that tenderloin working out for you? And there are a couple of big reasons, I think, that American serving staff do this.
Oh my God.
Firstly, the company often dictates it. It's seen as a kind of data-driven way of, you know, having good customer service. But having good customer service could well dictate this. Have they tried antifreeze with that? No. Well, he might go back to his milk phase eventually. Yeah. So the dreaded tip, or at least it was dreaded to me when I first moved to America, actually, when I landed at Philadelphia Airport. This is the first time I remember having to sort of navigate the American tipping system because I bought a drink at a bar at that very airport. And having bought the Jack Daniels, or 6, I'm not a good flyer. I turned to the gentleman next to me and I asked him, how does tipping work? And, you know, he very, very kindly offered, well, whatever the amount is on your receipt, just give them 85% of that. And that's about good. That's standard. That was a lie.
Oh my God. Oh, that guy was a dick. Oh no. Okay, look. I know, and the standards have changed. When I started, this is going to date me a little bit, but when I started in the service industry, the average was about a 15% tip. And then so 15% was good. And then 20% was really good. It has changed. The tipping culture has changed. A lot of people don't realize that, but it has. So now the average is 20%. If 20% of your total bill should go to that's what you tip the server. It's a little bit different for things like, at a coffee shop, or if you're picking up to-go food. In that case, someone still had to put it together. They're still not they're still probably not even a minimum wage employee. So I usually still tip a little bit on coffee and to-go food and stuff. There's still something that has to go into it, if someone is doing that service for you. So I believe in tipping your barista, tipping the counter staff at wherever you're picking food up from. Not necessarily 20%. It's a little different. especially if like literally all they did was pour a coffee. But if they made you a latte, that's something like some kind of skill went into that. Like otherwise you would be making lattes all the time at home and you're not. So, but like the point is, tipping is really important in America. And I do understand. Sorry, I'm sick still. I do understand when people come from other areas and it's not important, but like when I give you the paper or the tablet or whatever to sign, and it's like tells you straight up, like here, like there's a space for the tip. To me, that would indicate maybe that's necessary. You know, even if it was terrible, even if you had a really terrible experience, like a little tip, like something, like don't, because a lot of the time it's not the server's fault. Like if the food was wrong or you just didn't like it or something, it's like that's not the server's fault. That's either your taste buds or the kitchen. And it's, like don't stiff your server is what I'm saying.
It ended up almost bankrupt. Firstly, in the United States, regardless of the amount, it's very much expected that you do tip because that's basically how servers make their wage. And the standard amount that you're expected to tip is the complete opposite of 85%. It's 15%, right? But if you thought it was good service...
Nope, 20%. That's what I was like. I was a little bit worried. It's actually 20% is the standard now. And this, even when he made this video, if it was during COVID times... 20% is still the standard amount that you should be tipping pretty much anywhere.
Or just to be sort of a good person, really, you can definitely tip more than that. I typically tip, just try saying that after 6 whiskeys. I did that night. I typically tip, particularly if I'm on a trip, 20%, or, I might even round up to 21 if it kind of requires it. Tipping of some kind is expected here. In the UK, if you're thinking of going there, firstly, don't do that right now, but if after all this blows over you are fancying going to the UK, then you're not required to tip at all, right? I mean, people get paid a sort of living wage, more or less, for being a server in the UK.
Lucky them.
It's good practice. If you want to do that, you certainly can. 10% is recommended. And, growing up in the UK, I never really did tip all that often, I must say. I think if I were to live there now, I probably would do so a bit more. It's not expected. I mean, servers aren't going to expect you to tip. Although, if they hear your accent and you are American, their ears might prick up a bit thinking, here comes a payday, right? Whereas it's the other way round here. As soon as servers hear a British accent, they must be filled with dread. Mm-hmm. Or maybe that's not true. Maybe servers hear a British accent and think, he's ripe for manipulation. I've had some bad experiences. That's it for this episode. Thank you for joining me today. And, it's kind of sad that I couldn't practice a lot of these things for the video, except for the knives and forks, and those were the last plastics I have. As ever, a reminder that you can keep up with me and all my stupid ramblings on Twitter at LostInThePondUS. And if you've not had a chance to do so, why not subscribe to my channel so that my videos don't get lost in the pond? As ever, a big shout out to all my patrons who make spoons like this one possible. If you would like to become a patron of Lost in the Pond, you can do so at patreon.com/LostInThePond. Until next time, keep eating, keep happy, and I will see you soon. Thank you for watching this episode.
All right, so that was the differences between meal etiquette in Britain and America. I will say he was still incorrect about the tipping thing. That it should be about 20%, and and more if you are feeling particularly generous, but 20% is where you should be, and it has been for several years now, like 4 years at least. It's been about 20% is where you should be, because like I just remember, like, especially when I was, but was it when I started when I was like 18, 15% was totally not. It was like 15% is great, we like 15%. But he's also correct that like a lot of the times you hear certain accents and you're like, no. Crap. It's like, or like you hope the like you see you have a table and it's like, I hope the Americans pay, and like I hope the because it does, and again it's a cultural thing, but also he was suggesting that people like suggest you're ripe for manipulation, but it's like no customer I've ever had has asked me up front what the tip should be. Like they never, like none of the customers that I've had that are not from America have asked me that. And I work in a restaurant that does cater to non-Americans. It is primarily like Turkish and Georgian food. So we have a lot of Eastern Europeans who come in. A lot of people from Russia, from Ukraine, from Turkey, of course. Like we have a lot of people from that side of the world who come in because like it's home cooked meals that they're missing, and it's like yeah, like Turkish people don't know. And it's like, and we get a lot of people from Turkey who come in and they're, new to America. They don't, or maybe they're assuming that this is a Turkish place so they can use Turkish rules. But it's just like, there's like certain people that come in and you're like, great, wonderful. And like, I know I'm going to be working my ass off for this table and it'll be a $250 bill and I'll be lucky to get $10. Like it can be, it's like you wish they would ask you. It's like, please ask. Like just I'll tell you 20%. Like I think, but when I hand you the tablet, the options for the tipping are there. It's like 20, 22, 25, and you can do a custom tip and people do the custom tip and leave $4. And I'm just like, thank you for your $5 tip on a $150 bill. Like the options were listed for you. Like we gave you the options. And like for a while we had when we were just using paper tips, it was like 18, 20, and 22%, where like we told you what it was. Like, well, this is the percentage that you should be tipping. And like, and again, so it can be a little bit like, oh God, oh God, oh God. It's one of those reasons that it's like, I really hope and pray if I'm going to get certain, it's like, I hope they're a group of 6, because then I can add a grat. If it's a group of 6, I can add a gratuity, and I know I'm at least getting paid for the work I'm about to do. Because it's happened on many, many occasions over the course of the last 10, 12 years that I've been working in food service industry. Like, it's like, and you don't want to go in assuming anything, because sometimes people do prove you wrong, but it's just like the times that they don't, and it's like, damn it. Actually, I will say though that the worst people to take care of are almost invariably like groups of like middle-aged white women. Like they suck. It's like they tend to be rude also. It's like, so at least I will say this for people who tend to be like, who are not American, and you're probably not going to get a tip from them. Most of those people are at least very nice. It's like they're not, they might be needy. They might have a lot of questions. They might send you running back and forth, but they're not rude to you. And like middle-aged white women tend to be like, in a restaurant situation, those are the people that I tend to have the most issue with, typically speaking, which again might be me generalizing, but I'm just like, okay. And then they don't tip you either. Like that's the other thing. It's like, you're lucky to get 15%. Or they have to do this whole like, well, if I pay, like it takes forever for them to figure out how they're going to pay. And then they pay with like part in cash and part on card. But like, if you do that, you have to make it really, really clear that at least like how much of the cash is tip, because otherwise all of the cash goes to the bill. And then the person who paid with the card only tips on what they paid. So then you're only getting a fraction of the tip that you should get. Anyway, if you want to hear my food service rants, we can do that another time. Thank you very much for coming with me on this journey. I was interested. That was fascinating. I really enjoyed learning about like the different ways. Like I had no idea about the fork and knife thing. That's so cool. And there's a lot of stuff. Like I like to learn things that I wouldn't necessarily usually consider as being a strange or different or alien. And so that was cool. I like to learn about that. If you want to see more stuff like that, please let me know in the comments below. Give this video a like. You can subscribe to the channel or join us on Discord. That way you'll always know when we put out new content. We have several other channels as well, so we're putting out content every single day. Yeah. and enjoy the rest of your day. I will see you next time.